As is always the case, this is not legal advice. It is for educational purposes only. Always consult a licensed attorney for qualified advice.
From a very young age, women are handed a specific blueprint for staying safe. We're told to stick to well-lit paths, keep to ourselves, avoid dark alleyways, and whatever happens, just be polite. The promise is that if you follow the rules and avoid trouble, trouble will avoid you. We're taught to believe that compliance and spatial awareness provide a foolproof shield against becoming a victim. But look at this data visualization comparing how safe we feel following those rules with the reality of violent encounters. Women are actually 20% more likely to be involved in a self-defense incident than these traditional risk models suggest. Sticking to the old rules creates a dangerous false sense of security. When violence bypasses those superficial barriers, women are left completely unprepared to handle the threat. The fear of a random predator jumping out of the shadows is a male-centric threat model. It completely misaligns with how women actually experience violence. For women, the origin of violence is rarely a stranger on the street. It is overwhelmingly someone they already know, operating inside the privacy of their own homes. Data shows most violence against men is by strangers, but for women, offenders are overwhelmingly intimates and acquaintances. In simple assaults, non-stranger attacks dominate. Since a woman's primary threat already has home access, avoiding bad neighborhoods is tactically useless. We are culturally conditioned to scan for the wrong enemy in the wrong location. As a result, when an attack happens at home, the victim is caught in a state of total physical and psychological surprise. So how do we usually try to fix this vulnerability? We buy pepper spray, or maybe a firearm. This is the myth of the tool, the assumption that carrying a physical weapon automatically equals safety. The problem lies in what experts call the compliance fallacy. Women are conditioned to prioritize de-escalation, distress signaling, and passive survival. The goal is simply to endure the encounter, not to actively neutralize the threat. This flowchart breaks down the equation. You have the hardware, your weapon, and you have your software, which is your mindset. An inert physical tool cannot mechanically compensate for conflict-avoidant, submissive software. If you combine a weapon with a passive mindset, you inevitably get tactical failure. Hesitation in a high-stress window is fatal. If the user is unwilling to cross the lethal threshold and actually deploy force, the weapon transitions from a defensive asset into a profound tactical liability. Unless there's a total cognitive rewrite from passive survival to tactical dominance, handing a woman a weapon often just means arming her attacker. Let's say you do fight back and survive. That leads to the myth of justice. We assume the legal system will naturally recognize self-defense and protect the victim. It rarely works that way. The legal standard for self-defense requires the threat of death or severe injury to be imminent. That law was historically constructed around a male-on-male, public, stranger-to-stranger fight of relatively equal physical size. When a woman faces a larger, abusive partner, she often has to strike during a temporary lull in the violence, like when the abuser is asleep, just to overcome the massive physical disparity. Traditional courts frequently misinterpret this survival tactic as a cold, premeditated execution, simply because the threat wasn't imminent in that exact second. This chart visualizes the devastating statistical reality of that legal mismatch. In domestic self-defense cases, male defendants face a conviction rate around 40%, but for female defendants, the probability of conviction surges to 80%. The justice system is structurally designed to view a woman's necessary survival tactics not as justifiable self-defense, but as a criminal act. The bias of the legal system points directly back to our original blind spot. Because women generally do not believe they will become victims in their own homes, they completely ignore the need for post-incident legal preparation. Surviving the physical attack only transfers you to a sterile, isolated legal battlefield. In this environment, the survivor is processed as a murder suspect. If a woman manages to override her passive conditioning and speaks coolly about her tactical choices to law enforcement, she violates the cultural script of how a broken victim should act. Prosecutors and juries view that emotional control with deep suspicion. Winning the physical confrontation is entirely irrelevant if the survivor subsequently loses her freedom to a justice system she was unprepared to navigate. There is a practical solution here, but it requires deliberate action. Women who choose to arm themselves must acquire self-defense insurance and establish a legal pre-plan to survive the justice system. You also have to do the internal work. You must consciously discard the cultural mandate of polite compliance. We have to reject the notion that surviving an attack as a traumatized, hospitalized mess is an acceptable victory. True empowerment demands an uncompromising commitment to physical sovereignty. It requires a mindset of tactical dominance and the clear intent to decisively neutralize any threat to your life. Survival is a two-front war. One front requires rewriting your mind to win the physical fight, and the second requires establishing a legal shield to protect the life you just fought so hard to save.
Self-paced. No live fire test required. Get started now at class.concealedaz.com. Stay safe, stay legal,